Mahmood and you're watching Suno News. Let's get started. From urgent high-level talks in Moscow to a sharp shift in Washington's diplomatic strategy and a dramatic security scare at the White House. All of this coming up in tonight's bulletin. But first, a quick look at the headlines. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araqchi has arrived in St. Petersburg for urgent consultations with President Vladimir Putin as peace efforts with Washington hang in the balance. The visit follows the collapse of scheduled talks in Islamabad and a brief stop in Oman to coordinate regional strategy. The meeting is expected to focus on securing Moscow's diplomatic support for Tehran's latest proposal to end the ongoing conflict and restore regional maritime stability. President Donald Trump has scrapped a planned trip to Pakistan by his top envoys, declaring that he will no longer authorize 18-hour flights to talk about nothing. Speaking from Florida, the president asserted that Iranian leaders have his number and should call him directly if they are serious about a real deal. Trump emphasized that the core of any agreement must include the permanent termination of Iran's nuclear program or there is no reason to meet. Tehran has officially handed a written 10-point peace plan to Pakistani officials outlining its non-negotiable conditions for reopening the Strait of Hormuz and ending hostilities. The proposal reportedly includes demands for immediate sanctions, relief and guarantees against future military aggression, while suggesting that nuclear negotiations be postponed to a later stage. Pakistani leadership continues to facilitate the Islamabad channel despite the current diplomatic deadlock between the primary parties. A major security operation is underway in Washington after a gunman opened fire near a security checkpoint at the White House Correspondents' Association dinner. The suspect, identified as a lone wolf carrying multiple weapons, reportedly targeted President Trump and high-ranking administration officials before being tackled by Secret Service agents. While the president was safely evacuated and unharmed, the incident has triggered a global, level-red security alert and intensified the domestic political climate. Former Israeli Prime Ministers Naftali Bennett and Yair Lapid have announced a historic merger of their political parties to challenge Benjamin Netanyahu in the upcoming elections. The new Together alliance aims to end internal divisions and provide a unified opposition against the current government's handling of the regional war. This strategic partnership marks the most significant threat to Netanyahu's leadership since the start of the current crisis, focusing on national security reforms. International oil prices have surged past $105 per barrel following the stalemate in US-Iran negotiations and continued blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. The lack of breakthrough in the latest round of diplomacy in Pakistan has sparked fears of prolonged supply crisis, affecting global transport and manufacturing sectors. Economic analysts warn that without an immediate breakthrough in the Pakistan-led peace process, global inflation rates could reach record highs by the summer. And Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has held a nearly hour-long conversation with the Iranian president to discuss the evolving and sensitive regional situation. Islamabad remains the primary diplomatic bridge between the West and Tehran, despite the US decision to pause envoy travels. The Pakistani government has restated that it will continue its sincere and tireless efforts to prevent a wider regional war and to ensure the reopening of the critical global trade routes. The geopolitical landscape has shifted dramatically today, as Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araqchi touched down in St. Petersburg for a high-stakes encounter with President Vladimir Putin. This visit, following two whirlwind stops in Islamabad in under 48 hours, signals a strategic pivot by Tehran. Sources indicate that Iran is no longer satisfied with simple mediation. It is seeking a global guarantor for any potential peace deal. At the heart of Araqchi's mission is the Iranian 10-point peace plan, a document that has now been formally shared with both Pakistani mediators and the Kremlin. Unlike previous frameworks, this plan explicitly demands the lifting of all primary and secondary US sanctions, and most critically, the recognition of Iran's right to domestic uranium enrichment. Tehran's diplomatic corps has framed this as a workable basis to end the war, but the message from St. Petersburg is clear. Iran will not agree to the US demand of zero enrichment without significant security guarantees that only a power like Russia can help oversee. As Araqchi briefs the Russian leadership, the Pakistan channel in Islamabad remains on standby. While the first round of talks in the Pakistani capital was described as progress, the refusal of the US to concede on nuclear technology has pushed Iran to seek a multi-polar diplomatic front. This Moscow visit is not just a consultation. It is a signal to Washington that if the Islamabad channel fails, Tehran is prepared to align its security future with the global East. The White House has sent shockwaves through the diplomatic community by abruptly cancelling the travel of special American envoys to Pakistan. President Donald Trump, in a move that bypasses traditional State Department protocols, has declared that shuttle diplomacy is currently on hold. The president asserted that the US has already laid out its 15-point framework, which demands the total dismantling of Iran's nuclear infrastructure and the immediate opening of the Strait of Hormuz. Trump's latest stance, often referred to as phone diplomacy, places the burden of the next move squarely on Tehran. He has publicly stated that he is ready to talk, but only if the Iranian leadership calls him directly. This direct ultimatum approach has created a tense atmosphere in Islamabad, where Pakistani mediators have been working around the clock to bridge the gap. By pulling back his envoys, Trump is signaling that he will not authorize further 18-hour flights unless Iran shows a willingness to yield on the nuclear issue. Critiques including senior diplomats, regional analysts, and former US foreign policy officials warn that this approach risks collapsing the fragile ceasefire currently in place and undermining back-channel negotiations. They argue that sidelining traditional diplomacy in favor of our direct ultimatums could escalate tensions rather than resolve them. However, the Trump administration remains firm, linking any potential meeting to verifiable compliance, as the US continues to deploy Marines and airborne units to the region as a precautionary measure. The president's insistence on a direct line of communication has effectively posed the formal mediation process in favor of a high-stakes strategic standoff. And that's all for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Good night.